Plaintiff Gloria Britton didn't know that she had siblings on her father's side of the family until her father's funeral. Gloria believes the defendant is one of those siblings, so she petitioned the court for a DNA test to see if they share the same father. Defendant Raheem Miles says his parents were never in his life, and he was taken into Child Protective Services at a young age. Raheem says he too found out about his estranged siblings at his dad's funeral, so he's eager to learn the results of the DNA test.
Okay, and you all are here for a sibling DNA test. Check on the brother and sisterhood. Sir. All right, tell me, give me some background here.
I'm just here to find out some clarity about my background. I'm 51 and I was raised by my grandmother, and I knew I had two brothers and sisters from my mother. But at my father's funeral, my oldest brother, who got murdered, told me that I had other siblings. And he pointed them out to me at the funeral and said they were my siblings. So him and actually Raheem got very close. And when my brother got murdered, then me and Raheem began to talk and get close also. And, you know, he's been like a great part of my family. He's very supportive. I didn't meet my alleged father until I was about 37, and then he died a year after I met him.
Sorry to hear about your brother, but how many other folks were pointed out in the funeral that you come to
At that time,
hear?
It was about 4 or 5 siblings that were there.
That you didn't know of? That you didn't know of?
That I never knew of. Exactly.
And you know of how many, the three of you, how many grew up in the same household?
Well, we didn't grow up in the same household, but I knew I had 2 brothers and a sister from my mom.
So that was 3, and then you have 4 or 5 that were pointed out at the funeral. Did you speak to any of them?
I didn't. I didn't at all. My brother really spoke to him, because at that time I was still bitter about stuff, really wasn't into really getting to know my background. I was younger then.
What type of stuff were you bitter about?
The fact that I felt like I wasn't wanted by my mom or my dad, that my grandmother gave me a really good life, but I still felt like I didn't fit in, or that I was treated differently because I was raised out in the suburb or something like that. So I grew up kind of bitter.
You grew up separate from them, and you say you live with your grandma. Give me the background on that stuff. You were born in the...
Right, we all grew up in different places, but I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather, but he passed away when I was 12.
You all grew up in different places because your parents had some challenges, or your mother had challenges that she couldn't deal with at that point?
Exactly. So the family members took us and raised us.
Good. And why did you resent your other siblings, though, or your parents, rather? Why did you resent them?
Because I was younger and I didn't understand, because they never came around. I just felt like they didn't love me, but I was hearing that they were spending time with my other siblings, and I was just bitter and was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, that you didn't want to come spend time with me or be with me. So I was just grew up bitter. Like I said, my grandmother gave me the best life I could ever imagine, but it wasn't the same. No one came to band competitions. No one came to my game. It was just a bitter situation for me.
Let me ask you, were you more bitter toward not having your mother in your life just as much as not having your father, because you're a female or you were a girl? So I'm interested in knowing that, and I'm sure a lot of folks as well are interested in knowing, because Linda raised a young lady, and she, had her father halfway in her life, but her mother, she didn't. And so I didn't know how that really makes a person feel, whether if you don't have your dad, is that different? I didn't have my dad, don't care, never met him, don't miss nothing I ever had. But I suspect that if I didn't have my mother, who I lost at 17, so it traumatized me for a long, long time. I'm just wondering, was there the motherly thing? Go ahead, you tell me, how did you feel about your mother and about your father? Was there different in your feeling? missing them?
There was a different, like you said, with a father, if he was never there, you can't miss something you never had. But I knew of my mom because my grandmother always told me about them. I would see her every now and then sometimes, but I always felt that I was never good enough because I never understood why my mom wouldn't want to participate or wouldn't want me in her life.
How old were you when you came to know that it was an obstacle, obviously, that she couldn't overcome?
My grandmother always talked very well about it. She loves you, she just has issues, is how I was always told. And as a child, I didn't really understand that, you know, and then after I started having kids of my own, I still don't understand how a mother doesn't want to be a part of a child's life.
Yeah,
and it affects me. It's just, and I'm 51 and it took me to 40-something, the fact that I felt abandoned or like no one wanted me in their life.
Was it substance abuse?
It was.
Okay, yeah. And, you know, I always have to make the observation that the drugs that they dumped on America in the 80s, the cocaine epidemic, it ruined 3 generations of people. And crack was principally used by black people. And it ruined 3 generations. One, it ruined the crack addict. Then it ruined the child whom the crack addict abandoned. Then it put significant burden on the grandmother, which is where most of the children had to go and live because one or both of their parents were drug addicted. So that's 3 generations. So you're like not even hundreds of thousands, millions.
Exactly.
Who had to go through that. And I'm sorry to hear that. Same thing is happening with the opioid epidemic, which is primarily white. It is also used by African Americans, but the predominant use of opioids is by white folks. And so they're about to lose 3 generations too. And no community should have to go through that. Just a word to those who think it's just you. No, you're not just ruining your own life as the drug addict. You're putting an extra burden on the relative that has to take care of the child, and certainly we know that what the child's feelings are. And you're not the only one. All the children feel pretty much the same. They feel abandoned by crack. And so, and it's hard to understand that. And,
especially when you're younger.
So let me hear from...
It makes you a stronger woman, though.
It sure does. Sure does. Yep. Let me hear from you, sir. Give me some background.
Well, I'm from one of the roughest neighborhoods in North Philly. I was born in '84. And, you know, during that time, like you said, the 80s, the drugs and whatnot. So I really never were around my parents, or they was never really there as far as I can remember. And so around the age, I'm gonna say 4 or 5, I got taken in to like child services.
Hold on. These weren't the parents that she knows to be hers.
We have the same father.
But when you say taken away, that was your mother was different, right?
Yes.
And your mother had a substance abuse problem too that caused you to be removed. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? You see how devastating that crack was? Sorry to hear that you were denied your parents' participation in your life as well. And how did you grow up? With a relative or foster care?
Foster care. I mean, we went from home to home. And I can honestly say it was bad. Like, it's something I could never imagine. Like, I could never put my children through that. And I did finally end up with a wonderful family. Took me in, adopted me. The man became like, you know, I consider him my father. Father I always wanted, honestly. And I miss him a lot. He passed away in 2015 of cancer.
How old were you when you came to be adopted by him or live with them?
I came to them, I had to be about 7 years old.
Yeah, he was your father for sure. Yeah, that's the only father you knew, and that was your dad for sure. Sorry to hear you lost him. All right, I've gotten off track, but it just hurts me so much to know that these drug epidemics are ruining 3 generations. You're innocent. You know what I mean? Y'all are innocent. And grandma's innocent. Exactly. So why does she have to suffer because of somebody else's self-destruction? As well with heroin and the opiate epidemic now. Same scenario. All right, so I got to say all that. And let me hurry up. And you folks ready for the results?
Tune in tomorrow when Judge Mathis will reveal the results of today's paternity test.
It was crazy because, like, on one side of the funeral, there's a group of people. Then, you know, the side I'm standing on is a group of us. So the only siblings I was used to is the ones, you know, I came up with before we all got separated. And one of my older siblings was the one that was like, do you see them over there? And me and my youngest sister was like, yeah. And she was like, that's y'all other brothers and sisters.